Namaste and in la catch, and welcome to this edition of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and this week we have a most exciting guest who is an import to the U.S. About a decade ago, and her name is Miriam Zylberglait. And I don't know if you go by Lisigurski or if you just truncate that, but for the fullness.
Yeah, I keep it there on the side, so my dad keeps being proud of me.
Okay, great. Well, Miriam's a mother, a wife, a physician, an educator, and a well-being advocate. She's the author of The 3G Cycle of Life, The Secrets for Achieving Joy, Meaning, and Well-Being. She is triple board certified in internal medicine, geriatrics, and obesity medicine. Now, she completed her medical education in geriatric fellowship in Peru and provided patient care for over 10 years at the Naval Geriatrics Center. Now, she moved to the U.S. in 2011, and we're so happy to have her here now. Miriam, glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Sam.
Well, as you know, we explore the depths of what keeps us afraid, angry, ignorant, and immobile through the process of learning about the internal life and how that applies in the external world. So coming from Peru, there's a much different culture there. What was it like in your early development, and how did you get in touch with that inner awareness?
So Peru is a very nice place. Lima is where I grew up. Very calm, very quiet if you compare to many of the cities that we have here in the US. And this idea of family together, you don't see this separation when you are 18 and you go to college. You don't see people living in different places of the country. We all keep together, and I believe that that was very important for me growing up, because I grew up in a solid family where I had my grandparents next to me, and when I saw them, getting elderly and my parents taking care of them. So this transition from, being a kid to a younger person and then to become the caregiver of your elderly parents is something that I grew up with, and probably is the reason why I became a geriatrician and why I think that well-being, or big part of well-being, is to be connected to others and connected to your family, because that's what I saw during my early years.
Sure. And in America, it seems that we've lost touch with the wisdom and reverence for the elderly, and we don't treat them with respect and honor that they deserve. And, having that nuclear family intact for multiple generations, I would think is a true blessing, and kind of unknown here, at least in the American culture, but there are other cultures here who still carry that on, and traditionally. I know we've got my wife's from St. Petersburg. Her mother, who she's 89 now, I believe, and has dementia, so we caretake her, and for me, that's kind of a joy. It's not easy, and yet
No.
it's much better than putting her in a home and wondering about what's going on, and her being around people that are just so different that she's uncomfortable. That's not always the case for folks here in America. However, in that process, as you were learning and growing, were there any indications of this deep inner knowing or direction that you had? Granted, you went into geriatrics because you're noticing your grandparents and wanting to be available to take care of others. What else was going on? Because I know Peru and South America in general is a very rich spiritual culture. So how did that affect you? What were your inklings toward that, and how did you connect with that when you were younger?
So it's very interesting because when I was younger, many of the things that are part of the culture, right? That American culture, they were not necessarily close to me. And I will explain that. I come from a Jewish family. So in the bubble of the culture, I kept that as my primary culture, and the
Mhm.
primary things that I learned. So I grew up in in a place where majority were Christian or Catholic, and where some of the Peruvian culture, the indigenous culture was there, but I grew up separated based on what I was seeing in my house, right, and my
Sure.
grandparents. So I was kind of in a bubble. That bubble exploded when I went to medical school. And I was now not in a Jewish school, but I was with a lot of people from different places with different ideas. And I started to learn more. And it was very challenging in some way, because suddenly you are confronting things that you not only you didn't know about, but they were not in the same page where you were, right? But
Right.
also was very a great opportunity to open your mind and your heart and to start being inclusive. So I had this cultural shock at 17 or 18 when, like there are many other things in the world. And it was very cool because that allowed me also the opportunity to be curious and to start appreciating people for who they are, not
Mhm.
because of what their religion or the color of the skin, or or what they practice at home. And I feel that that shaped me in a very positive way, because today I keep doing those things. I keep going with this thing that I learned, that you cannot live in a bubble, that the things that are in your bubble are not the only truths.
Mhm.
That's not the only reality, that there are many realities for others, and that you have to be open-minded and respectful and inclusive in your life so you can take the best of others. So yeah, it was different for me, that probably for the majority of
Sure,
Peruvians, the
sure.
typical Peruvian.
And it sounds, very rich in that opportunity that you had, especially when you got into college. And from what I know of the Jewish culture, they are very inquisitive. They're curious. The questions, if the gatherings, especially with the men, that, they question everything. And so there's this open, I don't know if it's necessarily a debate. However, it's this inquiry and, of deeper realities and truths and things like that. So you kind of had that foundation to begin with. And then when you got into college, like you say, your bubble exploded. It's like, oh my
Oh
gosh, all
yeah.
these other things going on. So how did that affect you? Was there actually um, an inner being or an experience or inquiry that you had in getting in touch with that inner side of life? Because that, as we spoke briefly before, there's this notion that we live half inside and half outside, and most of us are bereft of what's going on inside. Were you able to get in touch with that when you were younger, and especially in medical school?
I would say that
Tough
yes,
question, huh?
but yeah, I will say that yes, and I will say that probably was not in the best way. I
Okay.
will say that contrary. It was when I started medical school in Peru, things are different than here. You start doing biochemistry, but you are seeing patients too at the same time, and you are 17 or 18. So the medical school is 8 years or 7 years.
Mhm.
And first year, you are really touching seeing
So
patients.
you've got the practical and the practicum happening
Yes.
simultaneously.
Yes, which I believe is wonderful, especially for someone like me, because I didn't like biochemistry or mathematics, but I love the patients.
Sure.
So I stay in medical school because I had the opportunity to be with patients. If not, I'm sure I will quit the first week. But when you're 17 or 18 and you see suffering and you see that outside of your bubble, things happen that are very different than what you grow up with. When you see people dying, when you see the first person that died by suicide in front of you, or the first kid that has cancer, or the first person that is not able to take medications because they don't have the money for. And you see this, what I consider was unfairness in the world, and so much pain that was not correct, right? That it was
just didn't feel right. Right.
Oh
we
my
were talking about
goodness.
emotions earlier and being able to share those. And that's the internal side, right? Where you have this sense of something's not right here, and what can I do about it? Right.
And I didn't do it right. I got very furious. And I guess, I mean, at 17, 18, you're an adolescent, so my prefrontal was not ready, and I didn't know better. And I took it with all the curiosity that you can imagine, and I took it against God. And it's very interesting, because from being someone that was conservative, not very religious, but conservative, that used to believe in God, you know, I started to be against religions, against God, against whatever you can think, because this is unfair. If God will exist, he will not allow these things to happen, so God does not exist, or he is very mean.
Right. Well, it's interesting how we transfer that internal anger about, things that don't feel right towards a being that we think is in charge, when in actuality, it has nothing to do with God. It has to do with how people choose to treat each other and the systems that are set up to do so, or not.
Or not. But that shows you how immature you can be, right?
Right.
And how easy.
And it's normal, because you don't have the maturation in order to understand that, because you've had a life built on belief systems, and now you're going into a place where you're learning, you're having experience and building experience systems instead that are beyond the beliefs. So that's where your bubble kind of gets burst.
Oh yeah. My bubbles, they start like the general bubble, and then bubbles inside of this general bubble start to explode.
Sure. Right? Absolutely. There's so many dynamics of it, and I can relate to the kerfuffles, I guess, you might have had in doing the labs and things. I started my college career in pre-med as well, and I loved the philosophy and the inner workings of what medicine is about. However, the labs just were horrific. And so, and I had some other things going on. I had a spiritual awakening during that time as well that kind of put me in a different direction, and has provided me a very rich life as a result. Not necessarily an easy one, as you well know, and yet there it is, right? It's like you have to deal with what's going on and incorporate that. So as you came into America, what were the things that you found that were adjustable in how you were able to fit into the American culture and find your way as a doctor? Because you do have, I mean, you're board certified in 3 different areas. That's a huge accomplishment. So I want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
What did you find were ways that you could participate at levels that you found deficit in Peru?
So I feel like I was able to be very accomplished in my career here in the United States. I am grateful because this was result of my husband supporting me, my family supporting me. I got pregnant during this process. I got married, I got pregnant. So my husband was helping me with the babies when I was trying to recover my status as a physician here in the US. So I have the support from family, and my career went in the right direction and even much beyond that what I was expecting, and I felt very proud of it. However, in order to achieve that, I compromised a lot of things that were valuable for me, and that I believe that right now I am starting to adjust to them, that it was a social interaction. I don't know if I adjusted to America in a social aspect. Like I cannot say that I have a lot of friends. I have some friends, but I didn't create my group of friends. I was so busy working, and then being a mom and a wife, and that this relationship that I used to have in Peru, you feel so close to people, your neighbors. Like I go out of my house and I just met a couple of people after living here for 7 years, and I just know two people in my neighborhood, which is ridiculous, right? And I'm saying, yes, I feel embarrassed about that, but that's I think something that I compromised and that was very valuable. Like I focused too much on my career. I was trying to recover what I lost in Peru, and I didn't notice that the most important thing that I lost in Peru was my parents that are still there, and my friends, and the social aspect of life. That at the end is really what is important. One certificate extra will not make me more happy or less happy. One friend, one good friend, or one more day with my parents, or spending with my kids or my husband, that will be making me more
Sure, those
happy.
are the things that really matter. And I've noticed that, and I've grown up in America. I've visited a few foreign countries, Chile being one of them. And it things in South America seem much more heart-centered. Things in America seem much more head-centered. And we compartmentalize everything. You look at the neighborhoods now, they're walled communities, they're walled yards, and you don't know your neighbors. And like you said, it took you 7 years to finally, meet someone. Right. So, and this is, I think, a huge disparity that we don't necessarily, we recognize because we're in our individual lives and creating our futures and doing their jobs and things like that. So we get really mono-focused on those things and kind of lose touch. We find our own bubbles, right? And especially in this last couple of years, here that came to a global recognition of, and it forced as it was with the obsession on self-hygiene and sequestration. It also, the silver lining, in my opinion, of that is that we had the opportunity, because especially through the the obsession on self-hygiene and the sequestration, to actually take a look at ourselves, because many people don't have families, they live by themselves. And so who are you going to talk to in that place, right? It's just you. So what kind of conversations are you going to have with you? And how deep are you going to go with them in order to figure out how to change your life and to find something that gives you more joy and happiness, which is, kind of what we're looking for, right? And the two things that provide that you mentioned, especially with the family, are to love and be loved, right? That's the social aspect of it that most of us don't have a lot of. And we see that in our society, and especially now coming out of the recent past, people are seeming to be more inclined to gather and find others of like mind. And the virtual opportunities to do so have just been phenomenal.
Yes.
Right. And now what do we do? Right. How do you see that evolving? You coming from that wonderful, rich family community atmosphere, and then coming to America, do you see it beginning to shift now in your view of what's happening with others?
So uh, I believe that I am trying to shift it personally. I am doing my own effort. And
Well, that's where it starts, is with the individual, right?
yeah, so I am trying, and I was thinking about, I was having a conversation about something that you just mentioned yesterday with one of my friends that is also a physician, and I met her through LinkedIn. We were talking about how good LinkedIn has been for many of us and other social medias, right? To allow us to feel that we belong, because we created these friendships with people around the world, and those are very similar to us. So there was not a geographic restriction. You will get together with people that is alike, and you will feel so good. But for some reason, that is great, but it's not enough. And we were mentioning that it's like, yeah, we are connected. Who is your friend? Oh, my friend is the lady in Nicaragua and the lady in Africa, and but yeah, who do you go with for a coffee? And then you start like trying to find with your hands, with your fingers, right? You look like we are kids having imaginary friends, right? But then there's no one that you
Yeah.
can take to
Imaginary friends in
the party.
cyberspace, right? And yet the deep conversations that are available, and the connections, and like you mentioned, that like-mindedness, and especially I found LinkedIn to be a really valuable platform in reaching out. That's how we got connected. I think
Yeah.
that, and maybe even through Biz Catalyst. What I find, and maybe you, let me ask you this question. Do you find that that environment is beginning to help you stretch out in your own locale? That, because here's the dilemma that we have, right? We have all these cyberspace connections. How do we bring those back into the face-to-face, and how long does that take for that expansion to then come back to where there's this personal interaction on a face-to-face level?
It's a very good question, because Zoom or any of these platforms are so convenient. You can be in pajamas in your house, or you can do this in between, in my case, patients, or you don't need to travel to go and see someone. So if you are lazy, or you're or you are stretching time, right, and you have to multitask, this is great. You connect, so you don't have real excuses. When you have to dress, get your car, drive to the place where you will meet with someone. So for me, for example, and I am an introverted person, it's like you are pushing me very, to an uncomfortable zone. But at the same time, I feel like in real life, right, not in the virtual world, in real life, tomorrow I get sick, an example, and I need someone to take care of my kids for a few hours, right? And I don't have family close, and I need a friend that I trust to be with them. So my husband can drive me to the hospital. Who will be there? I will do a party for my birthday. Who will come? Are you driving or flying from South Africa to be with my birthday? Right? I'm preparing the launch of my book, for example. I'm excited about that. And I cannot do it real, like, in real life, because the majority of my new friends who I love and I really like, I feel like family, are not in Miami. So my house will be empty if I have to invite people for this. And you want to start living in real life too, and you need to have those individuals that surround you in real life, because real life is existing now again, and we are going out to work, and we are going out to restaurants, and I have my doubts, and maybe it would be great to have a neurologist or neurophysiologist answering this. I don't know if we get these high levels of oxytocin that are supposedly, great a great way to feel happy and healthy and relaxed when you have human connections. I don't know if we are getting the same dosage or levels when we do this virtual than when we go see someone and we hug someone before we sit to get lunch.
Right. The
And
chemistry is obviously different, and the connection from that is more from here up, right? From the heart up, because there's not that physical interaction. And who was it that I forget the doctor that brought this out, but it was like everybody needs at least 10 hugs a day or something like that, right?
yeah,
In order just to have that
yeah.
physical connection to others in the world. And now we've got this extended connection with others. And yet what seems to be happening, and let me ask you this, coming from South America, you're probably familiar with the indigenous culture and the three brain system, right?
Yes.
So the gut, the heart, and the head. When we sense things from the gut, that's where everything is. And now science is even proving from a quantum level that everything's vibration. So it's a natural to tune into the gut, use your intuition and the solar plexus and all those things that so many ancient cultures were aware of. And then somehow we forgot, right? Because we started just like, okay, what can we do? Yeah, we live from the shoulders up, and it's more of a push and pull situation to find what we need or want or those kinds of things, instead of just slowing down a little bit, paying attention to what's going on in the gut and asking questions internally which brings up a great question. What kind of questions do you have internally that bring that deeper connection with another, even virtually? Do you assess how you're feeling and what's going on in your body as you're having conversations? And, with the skill set that you have and the training, especially as a doctor, you're much more aware of that internal or those internal mechanisms for doing so. How do you integrate that? And what are kinds of questions that you ask in order to ascertain that deeper connection and whether it's a trustworthy one or not?
It's a very interesting task, right? Because
Mhm.
I feel like it was easier when we were in front of each other and we will see all the body. Right now we have just a part of the body to focus on, and I try to read in between lines. I learned to do that in medicine. It's not
Mhm.
always what the patient is saying, but it's how he looks or how he acts. And in
Right.
some way, I replicate that when I speak with someone, and I try to. It's more than a question. It's what do I want to feel, and that may be the question, right? What do I want to feel? And
Or
I
how
want
do you determine what to feel in
what
that situation? Because and you mentioned it, in that determination and the reading between the lines,
yes.
right? So expanding on that a little bit, what does that really mean? What are the senses that you bring into play to do that?
I will give you an example in medicine to make this very evident.
Mhm.
You have a patient that comes to the clinic and tells you, I am in severe pain. And you try to use a standardized tool and you ask from 0, which is nothing, and 10 is surgery without anesthesia. How much is your pain? And they tell you it's almost an 11. It's impossible to tolerate. But they are in the phone talking, and they are doing this in their hair, and they are using high heels, and they are using makeup and dress beautifully. And you question yourself, how is that you have a 10/10 severe unbearable pain,
Right.
and you have the energy to look
Well,
so
yeah, you'd
wonderful?
expect somebody at a 10 to be doubled over in such severe pain that they couldn't even talk.
Yes,
Right.
right. So it's not only what someone says, but how someone looks, how someone behaves. And I try to, sometimes it's really, it's gut feeling that the interpretation doesn't fit, right? Or the message doesn't fit what you are feeling, and that there is a gap there. And I feel like that is something that we can easily use in our social lives, right? When you see that someone is telling you something, I love blue, but they are using, I don't know, all red. There's not a piece of blue in their
Right, there's
group.
incongruence, and we seek the congruence in what that internal gut feeling, heart feeling, those kinds of things. We look for congruence with the outer reflection, and when we don't get it, it was like, okay, something's off here. What am I missing?
What
Right.
they are missing, and sometimes it's not something. It's not that the person is lying to you, which
Oh, they totally
could,
believe where they're at. Yeah.
yes, they feel like that, or they are going through some kind of trauma or problem, and they don't know better. So, and I feel like that's the second level is, are they doing this in purpose? Is this just someone that is trying to be mean with you or take advantage of you? Or is someone that needs your help, right? Because in the case of us, servant leaders or physicians, nurses, psychologists, teachers, whoever is helping others, we need to identify when there is pain in the other side, right? And be empathetic and compassionate and know that this is not against us, but that person is suffering and doesn't know better.
What do you find are the best methods to connect with the others, the kinds of questions that you ask, the observations, which I think are most important? We have a tendency to ask questions and want to answer them with what we think we know, rather than just be present, ask a question and observe what's going on, from the words coming out of their mouth to their gesticulation, their body language, and even I would venture so far as to say, like you mentioned, the gut feeling. What's the energy there, and how do you interpret that and then make use of it in order to serve the patient?
So I want to say that against any scientific maybe information, research, or the idea that I may have about the term gut feeling, for some reason, I believe exists. I cannot explain it. I cannot necessarily understand how it happens, but I have to admit that I have it, and and I learned to trust it. In some way, I believe that comes with experience. Is kind of your brain, your body is used to see patterns, and when the pattern is not present, something gets activated. That, but I can go into a room with a patient, and I can, or sometimes with a student or a resident that are struggling, and I can tell you something is wrong. I may not be able to tell you what is wrong, but I can feel it. I have no idea. I cannot explain that. But I learned with the years, I am a physician for more than 20 years. I learned that when I have that feeling, I need to be more careful. I need to investigate more. I need to pay attention. Do not ignore it. Not because I don't know what it is or because I cannot explain it to ignore it. I am trusting my gut feelings for a long time, and they are working.
Oh,
but
absolutely. And they do.
they work. I don't know why, but they do.
And this is part of that, and I think this boils down to, truly loving yourself, trusting yourself, and believing in this additional level of diagnostician, right? That your diagnostic capacity is greater because you are paying attention. It's not just looking at the outer symptoms, the technology, what the results from the tests are, things of that nature. There's a whole nother psychological being there that's present, that could, in the way that they are programming their own bodies, actually be producing the dis-ease in them. So when you begin to uncover that, and it would seem that you do, what kind of things you're trusting your gut, how does that open into, or what's the process that it seems to be for you that opens into this deeper level of diagnostics?
So something that works very nice with me, and I didn't plan to do it. It's something that came natural, and then in retrospective, uh, I didn't even realize it. Actually, my residents find out that I was doing it, and became kind of a joke for us, because they will come and they will tell me the patient is doing great, everything is fine, we can send them home, nothing. And I will be like, are you sure? Yes, perfect. Are you sure everything is perfect? Do you want to see her, Dr. C? And I will be like, yeah, of course I will go. And I will open the door, knock, knock, I will open the door, and I will ask, hey, how is life? And they will start crying, the patient, and the resident will be like, what's going on? She was okay, or the patient was okay 3 minutes ago. Why is she crying? And suddenly, after asking how is life, the patient will cry, and they will tell us that she got divorced, or that someone is sick, or something extra will, right? Or that the pain is there still and she's ashamed to share it, whatever it is. And at the beginning, I didn't realize it was just like, whoop. And it started to happening again with different residents, and the residents will be like, Dr. C, what are you doing to the patients? They were okay. Why you are making them cry? And I will be like,
I just asked them how they were doing, right?
Yeah, life. That's the phrase. How is life? As simple as that. And they will start crying, and I was like feeling guilty, really, like what I am doing.
Well, one of the things that I would say happens is that you have potentially this sense of it's okay to be you and be vulnerable with me, because in that state of vulnerability, there's a certain sense of fearlessness that allows you to express how you're truly feeling and what's going on inside of you. And that's what we tend to avoid for fear of being rejected. And as you were talking about that, I'm running through my own mind is, okay, where else could I relate to that in things that I know? And the first thing that came to mind was Don Juan's teaching with Carlos Castaneda. And that I'm sure you're probably familiar with those two. And the idea, I think it was one of his books, maybe The Eagle's Gift, where he talked about sealing the egg, right? And so we have these emotional, psychic cords that we are attached to all the things that we care about. And with the complete inability to control any of it, we want to. And so we have that constriction in our own body that causes the outburst like you just explained, and how that person then shared, oh, there's all these different things that are going on that I can't control and I'm upset about, and it's just worrying me to death. Right.
Yeah, and it was so precious. I mean, it was at the beginning I personally, I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And my residents were laughing, because it's like, how do you do this? Like, the patient was okay, but this became kind of part of the practice. It was going beyond what was evident, and going beyond the chief complaint and the labs and and the basic
The
physical
genuine
exam.
curiosity.
Yes, because the truth is, you cannot heal a patient in the physical aspect of healing if you don't take in consideration the emotional and social aspect, and in many cases even the spiritual aspect, right?
Right.
Because even their religion or the things that they believe on may change their perspective about health and about the treatment that they will allow you or not to do for them. So you cannot treat bones and livers and kidneys. That's clear. And I feel very grateful of having two mentors, one in Peru and one here in the US. Both of them, they were my mentors in geriatrics. They are the ones that taught me geriatrics but they taught me medicine, and they taught me the art of medicine, and how practicing real medicine, the art of medicine, include these important aspects. You are as good as a physician as your patient is able to fulfill the treatment and have good results. If you come with a very fancy diagnosis and very pricey treatment, and you send that person home, and that person didn't understand what you say because you use very, you know, fancy words, and doesn't have the money to pay for the treatment, and was not able to read the awful writing that you have, so was not able to even know what's the next step, and it's vegetarian, so these pills that have something of, I don't know, meat inside, they will not touch them. Or how you expect them to come back for the next appointment and feel better? They didn't fail. You fail as a physician because you didn't ask the right question.
Right. And you mentioned the art of medicine.
Yes.
That, you know, there's an art and science. The science is the book learning, the study, the understanding the anatomy, the physicality, all of the things in the body that and their inner workings and the systems that are in place in the body that you have to be aware of in order to even initiate treatment. And then there's that additional level that's the art, right?
Yeah.
My uncle, the reason I started pre-med was my uncle was our town doctor, and he had that gift, right?
That's
And
so
he was just
beautiful.
this amazing diagnostician and just a really personable, funny, you know, intelligent, witty, and everybody loved him. And he displayed that art of medicine that, frankly, most places you go today doesn't have it. They're stark and cold and almost inhuman.
But there is a reason for that, and that's why I'm doing many of the things that I am doing advocacy as a physician, because we as physicians, we didn't want to forget about the art. We need that art. That's what keep us alert and oriented and happy and healthy. We went to medical school in the majority of the cases. I'm sure exceptions exist, but in the majority of cases to help people, because we are some kind of altruistics, and because we grow with the happiness and the health of others. That's our vitamin.
Sure.
But when you are in a system that forces you to work, like if you are producing bottles or I don't know, and cookies, and you have 15 minutes to see patients, and you need to press all the buttons of the electronic medical record to make sure that you satisfy your boss, that is a manager.
Check all the boxes.
Yeah, all the boxes and all the metrics, and you cannot prescribe this or that or the other because your insurance doesn't allow, and you cannot send the patient to that physician that you trust, that specialist, because it's not covered by the insurance. And if you want that MRI, you have to order first the X-ray that has to be normal. You know that is normal. And then the CT that, oh, it will be normal too. You know that, everybody knows. So now you can order the MRI, and now you are talking about a patient suffering of shoulder pain for 6 months because that's what it takes to get that MRI. And as bad and as frustrating this is for patients, it is for us. I mean, if you will ask me what is causing burnout in physicians, and we have 65% of physicians being burnout right now in this country, if not more, I feel like it's not the long hours. I'm sure that your uncle worked long hours, as I did in Peru. And
when you have passion for things, the hours don't matter. It's like flies, because you're in that place of joy for yourself in doing the work for others. And yet then, from what I hear you saying, is the system that's in place to manage all of that is bereft of the art, right?
Yes.
I understand that, you know, we're tied to time and money, right? The 15-minute visit, like you're talking about, that this is, and you've got, you know, many of those a day, and many, you know, multiply that thousands of times, and you have these little snippets of time that really don't allow you to really get in touch with your patient and determine what they are, so that relationship building never happens. And yet that's where the art comes in for folks like you, where you develop that, and even in those truncated time frames, you're able to kind of go that extra step in being able to connect with them. Do you
And I
find
try
that
to
to be
teach
true?
that. Yes, and I try to teach that even to my residents and students, and to mention that in general, because the system, I don't see the system changing right now, and I'm not trying to be a negative person. I am trying to be realistic. If this will change, not only needs a lot of work, but a lot of time and a lot of effort. So hopefully someday. But right now, we physicians, we healthcare workers, we need to advocate for ourselves, for our well-being, and for the well-being of our patients. Because if we don't do so, not only that we are emotionally killing ourselves, burnout in some ways is that, right? To remove our passion. That's what is happening. It's like we are losing our passion, our vital energy. And that's why in the medical field, many doctors will tell you, we don't like the word burnout. We said moral injury, because this is not caused by us. It's not that we are not strong enough, or that we are lazy. No, this is you being affected by the system that doesn't allow you to align with your values when you
I,
practice medicine.
I love how you use the word moral injury, right? That's so impactful in what's happening. You know, there's lots of things going on in the world today, and coming out of COVID and all of this, and the redirection of the workforce and remote working and things like that. And yet, one of the gifts for me recently, and this is how this came up, was the moral injury, right? I became the executive director for a global peace movement last year. And we have two principles: live and let live. And that's what it's called, live and let live, right?
I love it there.
Thank you. And so these are, you know, a moral and a legal principle. The moral principle is be a good human. Well, this is what you seek to do. And what I believe that most physicians, any caregiver, truly seeks to do is to be a good human. And then the don't be aggressor side, you know, the legal side of things, the laws, the rules, the insurance kinds of constraints that are placed that almost seem a bit aggressive. And so we, in the movement, we have this philosophy that, you know, we gather people to talk about what it means to be a good human, and how do we impact it. And there's all kinds of different levels of our experience and you know, professional vocations, personal experience, things of that nature. And then on the legal side of don't be an aggressor, we seek to actually calibrate the laws and adjust them to the place where there is no aggression. So this would open up the opportunity for giving the service to others that they actually need and deserve, as opposed to what they can afford. And that seems to be the real challenge, is how do we get beyond that to where there's this compassion built into the system, as opposed to the rules and regulations that prohibit things simply due to social condition and economic viability.
And sometimes it's not even because of that, because you will say, and sadly I witnessed that also in Peru, and it happens all over, right, where people that doesn't have that they don't have the enough money or resources will have limited access to education, food, safety, healthcare. But right now we are talking about, and I am not dismissing that aspect. That aspect is very important. But I am just removing it right now for a little.
Well, you're in the industry, so you've got a far better view of what's inside and outside than people like me who are outside of it.
And what we're seeing, sadly, is that even you with the best insurance, right, and living in the best city and having high education, you will receive very limited art of medicine, and you will be treated as a number in a room. And you will have to be part of or the result of protocols that say that because you have A, B, and C, so we have to do A, B, and C for you. And that's it. And the emotional, social, spiritual aspect of medicine doesn't fit in any way, because you cannot be for more than 2 days in the hospital. We need to discharge you no matter what.
Right.
And sounds kind of like in a movie, right? It sounds very non-real, but that's a reality. Right now, it's not even not having insurance or not having money or not having education. Right now, this is affecting everyone. And this is a disparity that is not a disparity anymore, because all of us users of the healthcare system, we are being victims of a healthcare system that lost the soul and the humanism, and is focused on production and
Profit over
making
people and
money.
planet instead of people and planet over profit. You know, the profit can still be there. It just needs to be in the right place, and the service needs to take place in order for people actually to have that, to have their needs met. Now, do you feel that this is actually, let's unpack this a little bit if we could. So the system exists, but that system evolved from something else. And I noticed that I taught high school for a number of years, and hope to be able to, you know, share some wisdom with students, and
I love
what
that.
happened. What I found though was that we put our students into boxes. We have prescriptive tools, we have assessments and tests that are totally intellectual, and from a holistic standpoint, we've missed the body and the spirit, right? We're just operating with the mind. Well, as we were talking about earlier, right? The body, the spirit, and the mind. And we've created these structures that haven't met what our initial intentions were, because I think the intentions were good to begin with, and then the management was the challenge. So
Yeah, I feel
do you think that looking back to the education and beginning to instill a holistic educational aspect to our school system, would that eventually then trickle through and have the effect on the larger systems, because there's more of a foundation from which to change them?
yes, you read my mind. I was actually planning to answer to that question. Yes.
Good.
I believe that you are absolutely right. What we are seeing in the medical system, and I feel like it's happening around, it's not only in the healthcare system, is we are selecting leaders and people in very high positions based on skills, intellectual skills, technical skills, all the things that we are testing in the schools, right?
Mhm.
But we are not choosing them because of emotional intelligence. That is probably this other aspect. I mean, literature talk about it like the most important aspect for growth and for happiness and for achievements, right?
Yeah.
This is
IQ
really,
is not near as important as EQ.
yeah. So, but I have to confess that I didn't know the term EQ, not only in English, but not even in Spanish, until probably 5 or 6 years ago, because what I learned in medicine was a lot of anatomy and physiology and a lot of other things, but I was absolutely ignorant about emotional intelligence, self-awareness, self-care, and many
Join the
others.
planet, right? Most of us
Oh,
have been that way.
yeah,
And
but
it hasn't been
that's
until we
embarrassing.
recognized, I'm sorry,
No, that's embarrassing. I mean, you cannot
it is.
be a doctor in a leadership position, right? With a lot of certificates and be an ignorant in things that are so important. For me, it was like a slap in the face. It's like I waste big part of my education not learning things that will allow me to be a happy, healthy human being, to interact with others, to be empathetic and compassionate. Even I may have all those things inside of me here and there, but there is a knowledge behind this. There is a science behind this that can
Absolutely.
be also teachable, right?
Right.
And I didn't know.
And like I said, join the planet, right? Most of us
Yeah.
know that because we hadn't reached a level in our planetary civilization to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Let's look a little deeper and discover that curiosity, right? That wasn't able to be present because we were too concerned with our safety and security and all of those kinds of things, which were the outer world, right? So we weren't able to address the inner world. Now, we had Gardner started in the 80s with multiple intelligences, and then around that same period, the emotional intelligence started becoming present, and this peering into what really makes us tick from an emotional place in our socialization, and how we can, first of all, find our own center, right? Because if we don't love ourselves, find our center, and be cool with who we are, there's no way we can be cool with anybody else, right? It's just not going to happen, because we're always going to see what we don't like in ourselves in others, and that's the experience, and we're going to be condemnatory and critical and all of those kinds of things, and maybe even go to war because of the differences that we perceive. And yet those differences are complete conjecture in most cases, because we haven't taken the time to really examine ourselves, our feelings, and understand the feelings of the others. What was it, Stephen Covey, the fifth habit is to first seek understanding, then be understood. Well, we've had that backwards. We've had this prescriptive, through a lot of different systems, a prescriptive, this is the way things are, this is how we want it to be, and follow the yellow brick road, or we're going to knock you off of it, right? So do you see those kinds of things gradually shifting as we are coming out of this recent kerfuffle that we've had with the global pandemic?
Yeah, I see that in medicine. I see medical schools introducing leadership and emotional intelligence trainings as part of their curriculum, which I believe is very important. I see that at school, like my kids, they are 7 and 9 right now, and they know how to express their feelings. They will use these fancy words, and they come to me, it's like, I am feeling frustrated and sad, and also worry about this plan. We are not doing this, mommy. And I will be like, oh my goodness, some adults will need to use all these words to express.
Now, maybe they're
themselves.
getting that in school, but they're also getting that from you, right?
Yeah,
That's where, and having, been in the school system for almost a decade, and I taught at district schools, charter schools. I had full charge of a high school, 2 different charter school curriculums. One of them I built multiple intelligence learning centers for as well.
wow.
Had a blast. And yet there was this disconnect, right? And the disconnect was from parents not being parents. And of course, they don't have manuals. We don't have these parental manuals as to how to raise kids. And so there's all these divergent factions from feeling separated, I think, is where it starts. And there's this frustration with it that then comes back through. And as teachers, we have to deal with it in the classroom and deal, with the classroom management. So how did, in that incorporation of the emotional intelligences now that you're finding in the medical industry and the schooling and things, that do you see that filtering down to the patient level and a higher success rate in the art of medicine with them?
Well, sometimes yes and sometimes no. Regarding the school, I want to add that you are right. We don't have parenting tools or manuals, but my husband has been very proactive in finding for us parenting classes. And it's a question of Googling and looking in the areas where people live and they will have that even as for free opportunities, because it seems that the community is starting to be interested in that, and has been open-minded for us. There are things that we agree, things that we are not able yet to learn, and things that we are getting better, but it's helpful, because the truth is that who knows how to be a parent? I mean,
Right.
it's very difficult.
And the support systems that are developing to do that are crucial. And what I guess it depends on how well those classes, those opportunities are made available to parents, and even if they know they exist, let alone have access to.
We didn't know. I mean, to be sincere, we were navigating the system. Our kids are gifted kids, so they are in the special classes for gifted, and they have their own needs because of that, and they push us very hard. I mean, it's not the same to have a 7-year-old kid that behaves like a 7, but we have one that is kind of an adolescent asking all these questions, and we didn't know how to manage. So the only way that we had is to start learning and to try to be parents, good parents. And my husband started, looking into different places and finding tools for us and classes and activities, and really he's the one that pushed me more, but we are doing things and we see the difference. And I believe that, again, the system in general may not work, but I go back to the principle.
Well, the system's built on people, and it takes people to change the system.
Yes. We need to be proactive. We need to stop blaming the system or feeling that we are victims of the system.
Exactly.
We need to take the decision to do something about something that we don't like. If we want something to improve, we need to go for it.
My dad, one of his tasty tidbits of wisdom when I was growing up, he said, be careful when you point a finger at something. You better have 3 solutions before you even raise the question, because, and it can also be interpreted, be careful when you point a finger, because you got 3 of them pointed back at you. So you better be prepared to deal with what you're pointing at, or don't do it. If you can't say anything good, right? Here's another frame of that. If you can't say anything good, don't say anything at all. Well, how do we support each other to be open enough to explore those kinds of conversations without creating adversarial conversations, rather than the congruent ones, and really look at something not from a personal perspective, but at the situation, and look at how to deal with it more effectively.
I learned a way to do it. I don't know if it's the only way or the best way. I will tell you that has been the best way for me. I learned during COVID that removing my white coat and my superpowers, right? And removing my mask, literally, right? The one that covers my inner feelings, and starting to be vulnerable with others and sharing the things that I was going through, help others to open up to me and to start sharing their own concerns, and then to find out that you are not alone in this journey. And something that happened to me not so far away is I was in the park with my kid, and there was a mom of another kid there, and my kid, because of his gifted and etc., he is challenging. I mean, he is not easy to. I love him. My book is full of the stories of my kids. My kids are amazing, but we are not in the typical. They are not the typical kids, which I am very proud of, by the way. But I mentioned that to the mother. I noticed that her kid was doing certain of the same behaviors. And I mentioned, like, well, we are doing parenting classes. Like, I became vulnerable. I opened the door for the conversation, and she just said, "Thank you so much for telling me. So it's not just me. I saw that it was just me, that I am tired, and I saw that I was not being a good mom, and I saw that I didn't know what I was doing." Finally, I shared some of the things that we try and the places that we are going, and etc. Something as simple as that, right? It's really
Well,
simple.
it's not complex. We think that this world is so complex and complicated to navigate, and as you just illustrated, it's really simple. And
Simple.
that there's simplicity in the complexity. And when you take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves.
Yeah, and being you has a benefit also. It's not only that opens the door for others to be themselves, but when you remove that backpack, that heavy backpack that you know that you walk through life with, that is, telling you you have to be perfect, you have to smile all the time, you cannot cry, you cannot this, you cannot fail. It's heavy, and gets heavier and heavier with time.
Yeah.
And gets heavier when you have kids and you want to show them that you are perfect. I am right now in a situation that I am very grateful for this, because I am a very clumsy person. For some reason, I throw things and I go through walls even the door is open. That happens to me, I guess, because I am very distracted thinking, my new adventure.
Sure.
you know and I will call myself clumsy at home. So I'm, oh my gosh, I did this, or oh, I'm so clumsy. And my kids will tell me, don't worry, mommy, it's okay to be different. We love you the way you are.
Perfect.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm happy that they can say that to me, because what it reflects is that they believe that they will
And
be
you've taught
loved
that to
the
them
way
already.
they are. Yes.
Yeah,
And
you acknowledge that it's okay to be different, and don't feel like you have to fit in. This is where in previous generations, it was all about learning how to fit in. And so we cut off that inner part of ourselves. Now, speaking of the inner part, back to your conversation with the woman in the playground, the inner conversation that you have with yourself first, to even be willing to step up and open that door of conversation with her, is the kind of process I'm talking about, that we have internally, that oftentimes we either don't do anything about it, for, oh, I'm too busy or something like that. And we ignore those inner promptings to begin the conversation. And sometimes it's, we don't know where it's going to go. And that maybe that's part of the resistance to having the conversation, or to bringing it outside and engaging. However, that's where the magic happens. And as you experienced, you opened your mouth, you shared it with her, and she was just ecstatic, because now she had an alternative
yeah,
where she
and,
didn't
and we
before.
don't and we don't appreciate the power that we have. Our words have power. Our actions have power. We don't need to be the CEO of the biggest company in the world, or to have a Rolls Royce waiting for us to have power. It doesn't matter what's your career, how much money do you have, where do you come from, your accent, in my case, right, being an immigrant. You have the power inside of you, and you can touch someone with your words and with your feelings and with your actions, and you can really change the life of that person forever. And we need to use that power that we have inside of us, especially during these difficult times, because the amount of people that are suffering right now in the world, in the United States, and I will bring numbers to if you allow me to just show the
Sure, please
magnitude,
do. Numbers
because
are
I,
always
I
good,
feel like,
because statistics.
yeah, I mean, I like numbers. I have my scientist mind, but I believe that facts sometimes show more than just emotions. And this is one case. Well, we talk that in the United States, even before COVID, 46,000 individuals die by suicide yearly. 46,000 individuals die by suicide yearly in this country.
Mm.
That is more or less 100 individuals per day.
Right.
When we think that from this big group, 500 of those are kids between 6 and 10 years old, the age of my kids. They are babies, and they are dying by suicide. And 400 of this big group are physicians, those that are supposed to take care of us. One per day, 1 or 2 per day, physicians. Nurses are even in higher levels. So something is wrong.
Mhm.
And these numbers reflect the number of people that are suffering today in this country and in the world. And we can be, and you said, right, we can ignore, I use the term bystanders. We can just be bystanders. We can close our eyes, our ears, and therefore our mouths and stay silent in the comfort zone of ignoring. Or we can decide to move out of the comfort zone and do something for someone else. Because if we don't do it, we cannot wait for others to,
Exactly.
to do it.
If we don't, how can we expect others to? Again, it boils down to a personal responsibility. In that personal responsibility, and we're kind of closing in on our time together. It's been so precious, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
What advice can you offer that would make a difference in a person's life daily if they would just do that one thing?
The first thing that comes to my mind, and maybe it's so simple, but at the same time so valuable, be kind. Be kind with others and be kind with yourself. Just a smile in the elevator could change the complete day for someone else. And when you are kind with others, even chemically, right? Going back to science, your neurohormones will be activated and you will feel good and you will get healthier. So just be kind.
That's the epitome of being a good human.
Yes, actually,
Where it
yes.
starts, right?
As simple as that.
Miriam, I thank you so much for your time, your energy, your expertise, and your wisdom in sharing what you've been able to from multiple perspectives and really making it practical and pragmatic for others too.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share. I have this as a mission. I want to change one life, a little every time that I can, with words and with actions, and people like you that are helping me to, fulfill my mission. I am super grateful. Thank you so much for helping me.
It's my pleasure. And we're on a collective mission to do just exactly like you're saying, to help change lives one person at a time, a little bit, and eventually will serve us well. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And namaste and in la catch. And thank you for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. I'm Zen Benefiel, your host, and I will see you next time.